What's up, everyone? Lead Adventurer here. I hope you're having a fantastic day, but more importantly, I hope you're having an adventurous day. And if you're not having an adventurous day, well, my friends, we're about to adventure down the interesting and ever evolving road of internet drama and politics. Yay. But, the showmanship and charisma aside, this is a fairly serious video. And this is indicative of a problem that has existed within the right of center political and cultural movement since it started festering in probably started in the mid 60s, and one individual, 3 the next year, 20 the next year, that kind of thing. And we are now at a point where the cancer of be nice, don't say it if it's not nice, you could have been nicer about that cancer has infected the right of center political and social mind, the collective mind. And an absolutely fantastic illustration of this is the conversation that's happening right now between political social commentators from center left all the way to right leaning, and some people who purport to be more conservative minded, and Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire. Matt Walsh did a video telling Dylan Mulvaney exactly what Dylan Mulvaney is and what his ideology is and the raw truth about that. I thought Matt's video was funny. I thought it was frank, honest. I thought it was good. And I saw it and I didn't even think it was going to be anything noteworthy because he was just saying things that were true. But I made the mistake of thinking that most of the people who claim to be on my political side have some degree of similar thinking to me, and nothing could be further from the truth, because it happens to be the case that we live in the world where two people can agree on a political position and have completely different reasons for agreeing on it. And often those reasons can be completely incoherent, but you both agree to vote for that political position, and so you're technically on the same side. It's a very weird thing that happens in the dynamic of human culture and society and politics. And that's a different discussion to tangent off into. Right now, I want to show you the newest entry into the saga of Matt Walsh versus internet political commentators. And we're going to go through this. I'm probably not going to have much to say. Honestly, I kind of want to just let Matt speak because I can't say it any better than he says it here. But we're going to go through it nonetheless. Here we go.
Because in the culture war, I don't think it's possible to go too far by speaking truth. The truth is the truth. It is what it is. It's the reality. Are we going to defend it, or are we going to conceal it? Are we going to embrace it, or are we going to hide from it? You can't have it both ways. When it comes to gender ideology, the truth is ugly. It is brutal and harsh and disgusting. I wish it wasn't that way, but it is. I didn't make it that way. I didn't create the ugliness. I'm merely pointing to it and saying, look at this. Look at it for what it is. But you would rather that I soften the blow a little bit, that I dress the truth up to make it prettier, more palatable. You want me to lie to protect the feelings of our enemies. And make no mistake, Dylan Mulvaney is our enemy. He is an open...
That part right there, you want me to lie to protect the feelings of our enemies. That part is so crucial to hammer home. And he does. We have another 7 minutes roughly to go. And he does hammer it home. But I want to throw my 2 cents in on it because it's one of the things that has always been most frustrating for me in any political, social, whatever conversation I'm having, especially with people who are supposedly on my side of the argument. This idea that we should always speak as nicely as possible with as much sanitation and sugarcoating to our language as possible has created a generation, actually several, at 3 or 4 generations now, of pussies. Matt Walsh has a contract with the Daily Wire. He has to keep it YouTube sanitary. I'm under no such contract. People who demand that you say things in a nice way are pussies. They are limp-wristed, weak-backed pussies who have never been around any level of hardship in their life, or the amount of hardship they have been around, they approach with such a distorted view of the hardship itself that it renders the experience moot because they never actually learn anything from it. The reason why our forefathers were such hard men, the reason why the people that built this country from the founding all the way up into the 1800s, the reason why those people were so hardy and why all of those prior generations are better than any of the generations after the 1930s. The reason for that is because they had to contend with real hardship. Modern medicine didn't exist. Industrialization hadn't fully happened. There were hardships in life, and they had to deal with them consistently, and they had to learn from them. They didn't give a fuck about being nice. Nice doesn't mean anything. You're nice to the girl you want to date because you want to make her feel good. You're nice to your kids when they're being good because you want to have a good relationship with your kids. You're nice to your friends because they're your friends. You're not nice to just anyone. Nice is something you reserve for people who deserve it. You have a base level of nice that you interact with perfect strangers on, and the moment that person shows you that they are not worthy of your niceties, the nicety goes away, and you become frank and honest. Not mean, not cruel. You don't have to immediately start hurling insults when people prove that they are not worthy of niceness. But you don't have to continue being nice to people who don't deserve it. And as Christians, we have this idea, well, Jesus said, turn the other cheek and love thy fellow man, and he would have been nice to thee. No, he wouldn't have. Jesus braided a flail and whipped people from the temple for the sin of blaspheming the temple and its purpose. Jesus was not a be nice to them no matter what kind of guy. He was a show them kindness and mercy to them kind of guy. And guess what? Sometimes the greatest kindness you can give someone, and in this day and age, the most common kindness that you could possibly show to these people, is to tell them exactly what you think of them in no uncertain terms and be as honest as you are possibly capable of being with no sugarcoating. And people on our side forget that. They or not even forget, they have no understanding of why that's so important. Because if you had if people on our side who demanded that you be nice to people like Dylan Mulvaney, if they had any understanding of how the human psyche works, they would know that the reason Dylan Mulvaney is so fucked up is because People have been nice to him his whole life when they should have said, Dylan, you're being weird. Dylan, that's not how normal people behave. Stop it, or we're not going to hang out with you. Dylan, bye. People have been nice to Dylan at every turn, accepting of his insanity and his bullshit at every turn, when at some point people should have been like, dude, you are an attention-seeking, narcissistic weirdo. We're done. And this is what's been happening for generations now. And the cancer of being nice has just metastasized to such a level in our culture that it has led to acceptance and the decadence that comes with acceptance. And now we are at such a point that I don't think there's coming back without a very costly revolution. I'm just going to say it that way. And it's all because people forgot the value of being honest and blunt. We shape our psyche, especially as we age, but constantly throughout our lives. We shape our psyche and our personality by looking in the mirror that everyone else in the world hangs up to us. If one person says you're a weirdo and a loser, that person's an asshole. If every single person you meet says you're a weirdo and a loser, you're probably a weirdo and a loser. But we don't have people that tell people like Dylan, you're a weirdo and a narcissist and you need to stop seeking attention all the time and learn how to make yourself happy. People don't tell people things like that anymore. And so, we have an entire country full of Dylan Mulvaneys. Rant over. Let's get back to Matt Walsh's thing.
Visible, active, and passionate advocate for the abuse of children, the war on fundamental truth, and the destruction of human society as we know it. You wish to defeat this man in a manner that will not make him feel bad about himself, but I'm here to tell you that you are delusional. I'm not going to protect your feelings any more than I'll protect his. You are deluding yourself. We got into this position in our culture precisely by valuing politeness over truth. We got here by doing exactly as you would have me continue doing, and what you blame me for not doing. We got here by refusing to speak the plain truth and by allowing the anti-truth brigade to emotionally blackmail us into silence. They use their own mental fragility as a cudgel to beat us into submission. That's the threat, right? And we let them get away with it. Or you do, anyway. I won't.
Yep.
Second, you say that I'm not going to convince the other side with this kind of rhetoric. But here's what you have to understand. This is very important. Convincing the other side is not my primary objective.
It's also not going to happen at this point. That's what the rest of the people on our side need to understand. If you think for a second that people like Dylan Mulvaney are going to ever be convinced by any argument you could make, you have absolutely no understanding of the enemy that you're facing. In fact, as Matt points out, many of you don't even actually see people like Dylan as an enemy. And that's a fundamental misunderstanding on your part right there. But back to the main point I want to make is you have a fundamental misunderstanding of your enemy, and that is that you think your enemy is good-natured or, in some sense, still a reasonable person. No reasonable person behaves in the way that Dylan or that other creepy bastard on TikTok who's grooming kids behaves. People who are reasonable and can be reasoned with and maybe brought over to your side are willing to hear you out and don't advocate for things that are antithetical not only to your worldview but to basic truth and decency. When someone begins advocating for things that deep down they know are harmful, and Dylan knows that trans ideology is harmful because the suicide rate, the drug abuse rate, the violent crime rate, everything, all the stats associated with the trans ideology trend towards very negative outcomes. Anyone who knows anything about the trans movement knows that trans ideology is harmful for the people in it. Transition surgeries, male to female, have an over 50% complication rate. And we're not talking minor things, we're talking debilitating things like recurring infection, constant pain, psychological distress up to and including suicide. And yet Dylan still advocates for it. Because he's evil. Because he values his own time in the spotlight. Because he values the attention and the money and the influence that he's accruing over the lives of the people he has influence over. That makes him evil. And therefore, if you consider yourself even a remotely decent person, he is your enemy. And therefore, you should not care what anyone says to him as long as it is true.
This is the core difference between you and me. I'm not looking to reach an understanding with these people. I'm not interested in compromise and dialogue. For those who castrate children and attack the very concept of truth and erode the foundations of human civilization, my goal is to defeat and humiliate and demoralize them.
Preach!
Okay, I want to destroy everything they stand for.
Preach!
The other side is not interested in compromise.
Hallelujah, brother.
They want nothing less than your unconditional surrender. We have to meet them with that same energy or we will lose or continue losing.
That's right.
And by the way, this is also a good strategy because it rallies people to our side. It emboldens the troops. It lets people know that it's okay to speak up and to speak truthfully. You know, it's often said that that you shouldn't preach to the choir. That's basically what they were saying at the end of that clip there. Just pandering. He's pandering to his own audience. This is a message that's meant for his own audience. Well, God forbid. God forbid I speak to my own audience on my podcast. No, preaching to the choir is a good thing. We need to do more of it. Because if the choir is demoralized and scared and cowering in silence, then you damn well better preach to them.
Right.
What kind of congregation can you hope to have when even the choir is too afraid to sing? And
he's speaking in greater social terms. Choir is a metaphor here, but I'm going to tell you this is true in actual religious service as well. Here in my church, we had a pastor who brought the alphabet mafia garbage into service and into the church. And half of our church left over that pastor's time here. Half of our church left because of it. When you begin diluting your message to cater to the enemy, and this is a point he makes later, you end up alienating your own side and dividing your own side. And we are seeing the fruits of that in the culture right now. We have a president who got 81 million votes, perfectly legitimate, most safe and secure election ever. We have kids having their bodies chopped up and mutilated. We have people telling us that chemical castration drugs are perfectly safe and reversible, even though basic common sense knows they're not. And we have created a world. This is particularly interesting and depressing to me. We have created a world that is so bleak that Vladimir Putin can get up at the pulpit of a religious service and talk about the evil perversions of the West. And he's right.
our choir, those who agree with us, the many millions of them, have been cowed into submission. They are nervous. They are timid, like you. And then you come along and say that we should ignore them and instead tailor our message for a group that hates us and will hate us no matter what we say or do? This is not just morally wrong, it's also terrible strategy. Okay? It is a dumb strategy. In fact, it's exactly what the churches have done for decades. And it's why most of them are dying. They water down their preaching to appeal to the crowd, a crowd that isn't interested in the message no matter how softly it's peddled. And while at best, because they did that, they bore to death and at worst actively alienate the very people who are actually sitting in the pews.
Yep.
So that's what the churches do. The people sitting in the pews who come to hear it, and then they give their preaching, which is designed to appeal to people who are outside the building and not even sitting there. But the people that are outside the building, they don't come in to hear any more of it. Instead, the people that were actually sitting there get up and leave. Conservatism has made the same mistake. And at what point do we learn the lessons that our own recent history seeks to teach us? Now, you say that we can't win hearts and minds by being nice. Because, by the way, I'm not saying that we're only preaching to the choir. That's not it. We also do want to convince people. But guess what? You don't convince people by being nice. You don't.
Factually verifiable.
At least not on a cultural level.
Not on any level. Go out right now and try to convince someone that their worldview is wrong and your worldview is right, strictly by telling them they're wrong in the nicest way you can. You're not going to convince them. If anything, they're just going to lose respect for you. It doesn't work. You know how you convince people? You demonstrate leadership. This is why the left hates men. This is why the left has launched a concerted and progressively increasing in intensity attack against men since the 70s. It started with the popularization of androgynous superstars, and it progressed into an attack against everything that being a man is, which is what we are seeing today. And that's because the left understands that men have the qualities that it takes to convince people of things. You either have to have a mob or a very charismatic leader of a man. That's why the left hated Donald Trump so much. He might not be the most articulate guy, and he certainly has many moral and character flaws, but he is charismatic, and he is compelling. And he gets people to listen, and he gets people riled up, and he leads people. And the left knows it, and that's why they hate him so much, because he leads people away from them.
I mean, where did you get this idea? Where did you arrive at this conclusion? That the way to win the culture is by being nice? Is that how the left won the culture? Have you been paying attention at all? They have seized hold of our society, indoctrinating entire generations, and they didn't do it with niceness. They didn't win these flies with honey. They did it by being bold and aggressive and by making their opposition's arguments seem not only wrong, but utterly horrific and insane. That's how they did it. See, it turns out that the tone of your argument is often more important than the substance of it. And the tone that actually wins the day on a cultural level is the one that is unwavering and which paints the opposition as so repulsive that you shouldn't even take their position into consideration. Now,
he's 100%
the only difference
correct.
is that they do that to us dishonestly, right? They make the truth seem insane. But what they're peddling actually is insane. We have allowed them to make the truth seem crazier than actual craziness. Okay? We take their ideas more seriously than they take ours, but their ideas are insane lunacy. And we lend them more legitimacy than they will lend to us when we are speaking the truth and they are babbling nonsense. You think this is a good strategy? What is the evidence that this strategy works?
There is none.
We moderate our tone. We seek to kill them with kindness, while they recruit legions by doing exactly the opposite. Again, I ask you, when will you learn?
And no offense to Matt, but he's misusing that phrase there. But he's misusing it because other people misuse it. He's using it for the purpose of illustration. Here's why the people at large misuse the kill them with kindness thing. Because people conflate kindness with niceness, and they have nothing to do with each other. As I said, often the kindest thing you can do for someone is tell them the unapologetic, undiluted, bold truth. What Matt did, and this is going to sound insane to many people who might hear it, but actually listen to my words and think about it for a moment. What Matt did with his initial video addressing Dylan where he told Dylan exactly the truth, was probably the kindest thing that anyone has ever said to Dylan Mulvaney. And I genuinely mean that. I literally mean that. My hand to God, I believe that is the truth. I say that as a man who understands the real meaning of biblical kindness. Kindness is rooted in the truth. And the further you get away from truth, the less kind you are truly being. You do not show kindness to people by being nice. Because what being nice is an effort to protect a person's feelings from the truth and from that person's own conscience. When you're nice to people, you're trying to save their feelings. But sometimes our feelings tell us when we need to change. Perfect example that I can use from my own life. I lost someone. I lost a relationship in 2018, or winter 2018. And it was at least 40%, maybe as much as 60 or 70% of my fault, because I was doing things in that relationship that were unacceptable. And when I was I was bluntly honest with my therapist about what I had done and how the relationship had gone. They weren't nice to me. My therapists didn't sugarcoat my actions. They told me, okay, well, this is what you were actually doing. This is why you were doing it, and this is why you need to stop. And I heard the truth. And I could have said, okay, these people are being mean to me, or I could listen, and I did listen, and now I am functional in a healthy relationship, which is the first time in my life. Because my therapists were honest, they were kind, and they told me the truth. You do not help people by being nice to them. When the truth was told to me, when the truth of my actions was revealed to me, when the kindness of hearing it explained patiently over and over to me again until I understood, when my therapist gave me that kindness and I finally understood the truth, I felt overwhelming shame and regret at my actions. And that motivated me to put in the incredibly hard work of actually changing myself. Those negative emotions that people run away from, that people treat like the Black Plague, are actually good for you when properly directed. You should not be nice to save these people's feelings. They should feel shame. They should feel regret. They should hate themselves. They should hate the part of themselves. Excuse me, I need some water. I'll get it while he's talking next time. But they should hate the part of themselves that has taken over them. And they should seek to cut that part of themselves out. And instead of telling them that, instead of telling them that they've become a twisted, disgusting mockery of humanity itself, instead of telling them that, you tell Matt Walsh that he's too rude.
Now, finally, if you sense anger in the words that I use when discussing this topic, you're right. That is one crime I will confess to. I am angry. When I look at what these people have done to our country, the devastation they have wrought on a generation of children and adults alike, the bleakness and ugliness of their worldview, the moral and intellectual chaos they leave in their wake, yes, I get very angry. And when I consider that my own children must inherit this culture, that Dylan Mulvaney and his ilk will prey upon my children and try to turn my own sons and daughters into mutilated, mutant, self-loathing, hollow, twisted shells, just like themselves, Well, my anger then turns into more of a boiling rage.
I would have said more of a divine wrath, but boiling rage is also acceptable.
And I know that I will do whatever is necessary, and I will speak whatever truths are necessary to protect my kids from this hellish, God-forsaken madness. Now, I have personally heard from many parents, more than I can count, who tell me versions of the same horror story. A beautiful and innocent kid, one day, seemingly out of nowhere, gets sucked into the gender cult and is devoured by it. The child they held as a baby and raised and gave their lives to and loved and still love becomes suddenly unrecognizable. All of their innocence and light and beauty just drained out of them, replaced by this self-cannibalizing madness.
And there's biblical precedent for that. Eve ate the apple and saw that she was naked and felt great shame. These kids eat the poisoned apple of gender ideology and realize that they aren't good enough, but they can be good enough if they accept this lie into themselves, but they know deep down it's a lie. So now they have a choice. Do they internalize the lie to gain acceptance from this group of people who tells them that they're awful and horrible just because they're a straight white kid, or do they accept the lie and become something that they aren't to appease these people? And it's a lose-lose situation for these kids that the gender Marxists are putting them in. The kid can either listen to their parents and feel uncool and feel like society is rejecting them, or they can accept a lie and begin mutilating themselves and feel the very temporary, very fleeting dopamine and emotional fulfillment of acceptance by these ghouls. But we all know where that leads. And so these kids are in a lose-lose situation where the only way to win is really to protect them from the influence of people like Dylan in the first place. But you say that we should be nice to Dylan, even though he's advocating for the destruction of children. Yeah. I'm not buying what you're selling on that one, buddy.
For a parent, to see this happen to a child, it is a fate worse than death. I would rather be dead than have that happen to my kids. See, the thing that I most despise about Dylan Mulvaney is that he is part of a movement which actively seeks to turn my children into Dylan Mulvaney.
Yeah.
That's why I'm entitled to my anger and to whatever language I use to convey it. I will say whatever I want to say, and I will be justified in saying it, because these people are after my kids and yours
and because whatever he says will be the truth. Let me be clear here. You can say something that is the most hurtful, heinous thing you could possibly think to say, but if it is true, you are still morally and ethically in the clear for saying it. And that's not me saying that. That's basically the biblical concept of truth. You're not supposed to be nice to evil. It doesn't say that anywhere in the Bible. You're not supposed to accept evil. You're not supposed to be nice to sin. You're not supposed to accept sin. You accept the sinner as they are while telling them you need to be better and explaining to them why they need to be better and helping them as much as you can help them to be better. And if they continue to live in sin and if they refuse to become better, you have to turn away from them to protect yourself from the fruits of their sin. Nowhere in that biblical creed of how to deal with these people is there anything about the concept of being nice.
someone else's. And you're worried that I'm being a little rude? Well, you see, when it comes to my children, the children that I cherish more than my own life, if you think mean words go too far, then you would be very shocked to hear how far I would really go to protect them.
Yep.
Trust me, words are the least of it.
I think you can imagine.
So yes.
And I love here, this is a little bit of just body language commentary here. You can tell that Matt feels like, oh, maybe I went a little bit too far here. Look at his eyes. Look at his eyes.
Trust me, words are the least of it.
Goes down to the desk. He's like, maybe that's a little bit too far. Ben's gonna get mad at me. But he's right. But he's 100% right.
So yes, my words reflect anger because I am angry. But the problem is not that I'm angry. The problem is that you aren't nearly angry enough.
That's right.
And that is why the Be Nice conservatives are finally, today, canceled. I'll move over to the member.
Preach. Sorry, I'm being a goofball, but you know, that's what separates me from all the commentators that aren't. Pretty much the only people who are goofy political commentators is me and Crowder, and Crowder's gone for the moment, so cheers to you, Crowder. Eagerly awaiting your return, my friend. So, I wanted to share that and throw my 2 cents in. I don't know if I enhanced anything he said. He's very poignant and direct and concise. But I hope that either between him, and I encourage you to go watch his full video, because we started at 7 minutes roughly. But I encourage you to go watch his video. Go watch his original video where he addresses Dylan. And watch this video. And even maybe if you have time and you're interested in digging into it, go watch some of the content from other people who have thrown their 2 cents in. And ask yourself, whose side am I really on? And whose side do I want to be on? Am I actually serving my cause? Am I actually helping push my worldview by asking the people at the tip of the spear, like Matt Walsh, to be nice to the very person the spear is supposed to be piercing? The neutering of men and the mutilation of family values is what put America in the position it's in. So go ahead. If you want to lose the culture war, if you want to see our very society tumble to the ground, the tallest towers crumble into dust, the greatest works of art cease to exist and be burned in piles in the public square, if you want to see our greatest accomplishments laid low by people like Dylan Mulvaney and Antifa and BLM, go ahead. Keep telling Matt Walsh, Steven Crowder, me, to be nice. See how much that helps you or the world. Welcome to the adventure. See you next time.